There's no other ballpark in the United States of America quite like Cardines Field. The history of that place, it goes back to the 1800s when the grounds were first used for baseball. It was an old railroad catch basin. There was a big kind of swampy area, a lot of stagnant water. They used the water for the old steam engines in downtown Newport. The neighbors at Cardines Field were complaining in the 1800s. They wanted to see those old catch basins drained, and the railroad workers were more than happy to comply. They drained off enough area to cut out for a baseball diamond and a bit of an outfield. Informal baseball and even some formal baseball was being played there. But then in the early 1900s, around 1908, you've got some serious baseball action happening at Cardines Field.
Yeah, when you talk about history, there were barnstorming teams that traveled around the country and they made stops in Cardines Field. Some of the greatest baseball players in America, whether you're talking the Negro Leagues or the Major League Baseball, guys just coming up, got their start, and they traveled to Cardines Field and played there.
Phil Rizzuto, Bob Feller, Satchel Paige were in the Navy, who had ties to the Navy, who came to Naval Station Newport. Those guys are baseball players, so they were seeking somewhere to play, and they did come over to Cardines and play baseball.
The grandstand itself, the modern structure of the ballpark, that's another part of American history because, of course, in the 1930s, you had the Great Depression, and FDR came along with alphabet soup, a lot of different governmental agencies designed to stimulate the economy, get Americans back to work and out of the Depression. One of those agencies was the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. One of many, many projects that agency completed in the 30s were public works projects dedicated to athletics and sports. But Cardines Field is definitely one of the gems of that era. In World War I, a lot of immigrants served in the United States Army and were deployed into Europe in combat. That included Bernardo Cardines. Bernardo Cardines was a young Italian immigrant in Newport. He was the first resident of Newport to lose his life fighting for the United States in World War I. The field was named in his honor. Cardines Field has history, but it hosts one of the more historic amateur baseball leagues in the United States, the George Donnelly Sunset League. Began play in 1919 at Cardines Field. And they call it the Sunset League because at the time, Cardines didn't have lights. When the sun went down, the players went home. It didn't matter what the score was or what inning it was.
And now you have that tradition and that history repeating itself today when you look at some of the amateur leagues that have played there, whether it's the New England Collegiate Baseball League, you have the high school baseball, the Sunset League is the longest running amateur league in the country. That's still playing at Cardines Field. So you have all that history and that tradition, and it's still going on here today.
Over time, Cardines was threatened. The economy of Newport began to change. The Navy, which still has a presence in Newport, began to move a lot of the destroyers and the ships that were stationed there out. And without that Navy personnel, some of the nightlife in Newport and some of what gave Newport its charm began to fade. And that's when the economy of Newport really started to transition full on into a tourism economy. And when you have a tourism economy, you need infrastructure. You need places for people to park. And Cardines, for a time, was being looked at as a place to be demolished for added parking in Newport. That, of course, would have been devastating. And a number of Newport residents said, no, we're not gonna let that happen. And not just Newport residents, a number of residents of Aquidneck Island, Middletown, Portsmouth, Newport, they came together and they said, we want to preserve Cardines Field. Baseball being played at Cardines is too important. Whether it's the Sunset League, American Legion, or Salve Regina, or Rogers High School, or all these other leagues and teams that called Cardines Field home from time to time, it was too historic to let go. And that's when you started to see some of the work done to the field to renovate it, to improve it. By the time the Newport Gulls came along in 2001, and they firmly established themselves as one of the premier summer college baseball teams in the country, certainly the premier summer collegiate baseball team in the NECBL in all of New England. And They called Cardines their home, and Newport fell in love with the Gulls.
The pitch. Swinging a line shot. Great to Millie. Steps in the bag at second for the double play. Or is it a triple play? It's a triple play. Can you believe it?
Now, the Gulls are there in June and July and August, and on Mondays and Friday nights, 4th of July weekend, they'll bring in 3,000 fans, 3,500 fans to that ballpark. And the place just comes alive. The atmosphere, the excitement of the ballpark. You walk in and you can really feel it. And what makes Cardines so special, especially in the modern era, is the success of the Gulls. The Gulls have been such an important franchise in the NECBL. They've won 6 NECBL championships. And many of those championships, all of those playoff series, were right there in downtown Newport, seen by thousands of fans, rocking Cardines Field. 2020 brought challenges to our society like we've never faced before. And the COVID-19 pandemic really challenged athletics. It challenged athletics at every level, from the major league level and professional sports right on down to the little league. Cardines Field was no exception. You've got a lot of leagues that use that ballpark that just could not play in 2020. You've got a lot of players that are trying to develop their skills, trying to learn the game of baseball and maybe even make a career out of it. And those players were harmed in 2020 by the COVID-19 pandemic, by their inability to play.
It was grim for a little bit there as we were awaiting the decision by the New England Collegiate Baseball League as to what we were going to do for the summer. But we stayed headstrong and we stayed optimistic and positive that we'd be able to play baseball in some capacity. And the government, local, state officials, and the CDC all gave the go-ahead that we could do it in a safe manner. We hit the ground running and were able to put together a league at Cardines Field with some of the individuals who were going to play for the Newport Gulls, some players who were going to play in the New England Collegiate Baseball League, the Cape Cod League, some of the neighboring leagues here. And one of the big ultimate draws was Cardines Field. The fact that we were playing at this historic, famous ballpark drew in individuals from all throughout New England.
It's interesting walking into Cardines Field for the first time. I walked in there for the first time for a high school baseball game. I was broadcasting it for public access television. And when I walked in, it hits you right away. You see the historic nature of the grandstands, how old everything is, how untouched by time so much of the ballpark. Over a decade with the Newport Gulls, I saw so many times the faces of those players when they walked into that ballpark the first time and their mouth was agape. They were completely taken aback by that ballpark.
Once you look out to the field, it's those juts, it's those alleyways that fields the like of Ebbets Field, Fenway Park, Wrigley, that were all made during that same era, that have that same feel and ultimately impression on those that play there and watch games there. And big name, Hall of Famer that comes to mind is Mike Schmidt. He loves coming down to Cardines Field.
The play we just saw, I guess you guys know that being here all summer, the sun's in the first baseman's eyes over there.
Had the fortune to meet the spaceman, Bill Lee.
I love this field. It's set up just like a big league field. The hitter's got a good background. And the sun, wear glasses. Pick the ball up on the bat. It's a big center field here, so you got to really play them straight away.
There are very few places that have an identity. When you walk into them, you know you're there. You can get a sense of the history. You feel it in your bones. There's something about it. And when you walk into Fenway Park, you walk into Cardines Field, you get that sensation, you get that chill down your spine. You think about all of the baseball that's been played there, how it started, and the fact that it's still there. That's something this old still exists. You don't get that anymore with the modern stadiums. Sure, they're beautiful, they look great, but they don't have that it factor, that personality. You just don't get that anywhere else like you do when you walk into Cardines Field. It's a really special place. There's just nothing else like it.
It's interesting, a few years ago I was working for the Newport Gulls collegiate baseball team, and randomly I was connected with Bernardo Cardines' great nephew, Bernardino Cardines, who himself is a retired professor. He lives in Venafro, Italy, and he was doing research on his family and his great uncle who emigrated to America well over 100 years ago, and trying to find out more about him. And he had no idea his whole life that his uncle had a baseball park in Newport, Rhode Island named after him. So for Bernardino Cardines to uncover this history, his own family history, and he's sitting over halfway around the world in Italy and learning about this ballpark, learning about American baseball. And I think one day it'd be great to see him visit America and walk into the ballpark that's named for his great uncle who gave his life in World War I.